your daily dose of psychology. The Jungian, daily, your daily dose of psychology. It's January 15th, 2025. You're sitting in that familiar corner of your apartment, the afternoon light filtering through your half-closed blinds, casting those long shadows across your laptop screen. Your phone buzzes with another dating app notification, but you don't reach for it immediately. Instead, you find yourself staring at the reflection in your black screen, wondering, what is it that actually draws people to you? Meet Sarah Chen, 32, a data analyst at a renewable energy startup in Austin. She lives in a converted warehouse loft with exposed brick walls, succulents lined up on her fire escape, and a French press that she uses religiously every morning at 6:47 a.m. Sarah has this peculiar habit of organizing her bookshelf by the emotional weight of each book, rather than alphabetically. And she keeps a small notebook where she sketches the facial expressions of strangers on the subway. For the past 3 months, Sarah has been caught in what she calls her attraction mystery. Two completely different people have become intensely interested in her, and she can't figure out why. There's Marcus, the quiet philosophy professor she met at a climate activism meeting, who always smells faintly of coffee and old books. And then there's Zoe, the extroverted marketing director from her yoga class, who wears bold jewelry and speaks in animated gestures. What confuses Sarah is that these two people seem to see completely different versions of her. You have this incredible depth, Marcus told her last Tuesday over dinner at that tiny Ethiopian place downtown. When you talk about renewable energy systems, there's this intensity in your eyes, like you're seeing connections the rest of us miss. You remind me of those old philosophical texts about finding meaning in chaos. But just 2 days later, Zoe said something entirely different while they were walking through Zilker Park. Sarah, you're so grounded and calm. When I'm with you, I feel like I can finally slow down. You have this peaceful energy that makes me want to be more centered, more, authentic. You bring out this side of me I didn't know existed. Sarah found herself lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan slowly rotating above her bed, trying to reconcile these two completely different descriptions. Was she the intense, philosophical type that Marcus saw? Or was she the calm, grounding presence that Zoe described? The confusion gnawed at her because both descriptions felt partially true and partially foreign. The next morning, while making her coffee, Sarah called her sister Emma. I don't understand what's happening, she said, watching the steam rise from her mug. It's like they're each falling in love with a different person who happens to have my face. Emma laughed. Maybe they're not falling in love with you at all. Maybe they're falling in love with something they see in you that they wish they had themselves. That comment stuck with Sarah for days. She began paying closer attention to what was actually happening in her interactions. When Marcus talked about her intensity, she noticed he always looked slightly wistful, as if he were describing something he longed for. He would lean forward, his usually measured voice becoming more animated, almost hungry. She realized that Marcus, despite his intellectual confidence, seemed to crave a kind of passionate certainty that he felt was missing from his own carefully reasoned existence. With Zoe, the dynamic was completely different. During their conversations, Zoe's usual rapid-fire energy would gradually slow down. Her shoulders would relax, her breathing would deepen, and she'd start speaking more softly. It was as if being around Sarah gave Zoe permission to access a quieter, more contemplative side of herself that her high-energy career rarely allowed. One evening, while Sarah was reading Jung's work on relationships for a book club, something clicked. She came across his observation that we often fall in love not with the person themselves, but with the projected image of our own undeveloped potential. Jung identified two primary psychological mechanisms behind romantic attraction: projection of the anima and animus, and the recognition of our unlived life. The anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect within men, while the animus represents the unconscious masculine aspect within women. But beyond gender, these archetypes represent the unlived aspects of our personality, the qualities we admire but haven't fully developed in ourselves. When we encounter someone who embodies these qualities, we experience what feels like love, but is actually a profound recognition of our own potential. Marcus wasn't falling in love with Sarah's intensity. He was falling in love with his own capacity for passionate engagement that he saw reflected in her. His careful analytical nature had developed at the expense of spontaneous emotional investment. Sarah became a mirror for the part of himself he'd never fully explored. Zoe's attraction worked differently. Her professional success required constant external focus and high energy. When she looked at Sarah, she saw her own undeveloped capacity for inner stillness and authentic self-reflection. Sarah represented the grounded, contemplative life that Zoe secretly yearned for but felt too afraid to pursue. This insight transformed how Sarah understood not just these relationships, but the entire nature of romantic attraction. People fall in love with you for two fundamental reasons: because you embody qualities they've disowned in themselves, or because you represent a path of development they unconsciously long to explore. Sarah began approaching her relationships with this new understanding. Instead of trying to be what others projected onto her, she started gently reflecting back their own undeveloped qualities. With Marcus, she would ask questions that invited him to explore his own passion and intuition. With Zoe, she created space for quieter, more reflective conversations that allowed Zoe to discover her own capacity for depth. The real transformation happened when Sarah realized this dynamic applied to her own attractions as well. She began examining what qualities drew her to others, recognizing them as invitations to develop those same qualities within herself. Love, Sarah discovered, isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about recognizing the completion that already exists within you, waiting to be developed. When someone falls in love with you, they're actually falling in love with their own unrealized potential. And that recognition can become the beginning of genuine growth for both people.